I did not start in a strategic place in my career, in my opinion. I'm happy for the opportunities that I had, but I wasn't as strategic as I could have been. And here's the thing: if you are someone who's leading with integrity, right, then you being positioned in certain leadership roles can really transform the whole culture of organizations. And so I did great work. I did work in excellence. I kept being promoted into different positions. But had I started in a different place, getting mentors and sponsors meaning people who can directly influence me getting opportunities sooner, as a professional would have been even better. So an interesting thing that I'll share is even where I'm at now as an entrepreneur, having my business for 11 years now, I'm always getting mentors and sponsors now. Even at this time in my career, this season in my career.
Hello and welcome once again to another episode of Leading with Integrity. My guest today is Daphne Valcin, a certified professional coach, speaker and corporate trainer focusing on career advancement and business growth. She's been featured in Forbes, Voyage magazine, and I'm sure others as a result of her work. And Daphne has coached over 400 clients across 4 countries since starting her business in 2014. Today, we'll be digging into some of the key leadership challenges, such as influence and impact, communicating and managing expectations, team and organizational culture, how to position yourself for that next promotion, and the ideas around work-life balance and whether that is the right word or not. I have an opinion. If you've listened before, you probably know that opinion, but I don't want to spoil the episode. You just have to listen and see. But there is a common thread of leadership and culture throughout this episode, and I really enjoyed this chat. I know you will too. So stick around, listen to the end for details on how to learn more about Daphne, as well as joining the online community that I'm building alongside this podcast and how you can be a part of that.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Daphne, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It's great to have you on the show. Lovely to meet you. Looking forward to our conversation already.
Thank you so much. And it is lovely to meet you as well.
Yeah, over to you for a little bit, really. Tell us about yourself, your career so far, what you do, why you do it.
Sure. My name is Daphne Valcin. I'm CEO of Valcin Strategic Solutions. We help high potential leaders to influence and to increase their impact up, down, and across their organizations. We especially focus on communication, connection, collaboration, and conflict. So I have been coaching for about 11 years now and had my boutique consulting firm for that long as well. And I have coached over 400 clients across 4 countries. And then I've also done facilitated training for over 200 organizations during that time as well, on things like emotional intelligence, having difficult conversations, resilience, and more. And I've also worked with people from JP Chase, from United Healthcare, from UPS, and more. So I love what I do. And I like to think that my whole life trajectory has been tapping into the potential of people and their ideas.
I like it. And so what started you down the path to coaching? What drew you to it originally?
That's a great question. So to hopefully make a long story short, a lot of my background has to do with public relations. That is my undergraduate degree. And then education as well. So for example, I was a public affairs manager working for an education policy firm. I wanted to try to help people go from interest to action and was curious about how that worked. I find that translates well in coaching to helping people go from desire to action, or from will to action, or even from companies to go from where they see themselves now to vision. But I was going to get an MBA. I wanted to get an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration. and work at Deloitte Consulting was my dream. And instead, I fell in love with a man from Florida in the United States. I live in Georgia now. I fell in love with a man from Florida. And instead of getting my MBA, decided that I was going to figure out what I could do to really help to be flexible in my work as our family grew, if we had a family someday, right? Because we got married within a year of meeting. So during that year is when I signed on to a certification program to become a coach, and decided that coaching was the best way to merge that background in PR and education, the tapping into the potential of people and their ideas. But initially I was going to get my MBA and try to go to a top business school somewhere in the country was my plan, but plan shifted once love came in the picture.
That's interesting. And thank you for being so honest about it as well. I feel like a lot of people would brush that sort of story under the carpet a little bit.
Yeah, I could definitely skip the falling in love part and be like, well, I decided to merge together everything into the same. But no. Yeah. I was going to get my MBA. So I hope that that's helpful to someone who also experiences pivots in their lives.
Yeah. I mean, there's that saying, isn't there? Life happens, life gets in the way. But I feel like with your story, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but it's kind of the opposite, wasn't it? Like life has led you down the right path in the end.
I completely agree. And I look at my children. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old girl now, 2 little girls, and the life we're afforded through my flexibility and travel and things like that. They travel with me sometimes. And it's beautiful. So you're right. Life leads you down the right path.
Yeah, that's a lovely thought, isn't it? Plus, of course, the world we live in now, remote learning is much more prevalent. You always could go and do that MBA anyway. You wouldn't have to go and do it, would you? You could do it where you are.
It's completely true. Yeah. And I do like a work from anywhere kind of life.
Absolutely. So one aspect that I know that you speak about, and you probably do quite a bit of work on this as well, and it's something that we don't really talk about very much, at least on this podcast in the context of leadership. It's how we can position ourselves for promotion. And I think part of the reason I don't talk about it very much is because I tend to focus on the much smaller companies where promotion tends to just be an almost by default thing because there's no one else to choose from kind of thing. But actually, with your experience with bigger companies, bigger organizations, a lot of the listeners probably would find this useful. So, I mean, what should any more, I hate the word junior, but I can't think of a better one right now. Someone lower down in a hierarchy, let's say. What should they be doing if they want to position themselves for a promotion?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'd also like to position this question in thinking about for even people who do work at small companies, or if you are like one level under, a C-suite role or something like that, small company or big company. So in my opinion, in every circumstance this works, it is making sure that you are documenting the achievements that you have at work. And when I say that, I mean with data. So if you work on the sales team, what volume did you sell that people commended this week? Or how many key stakeholders do you engage with on a regular basis? Or for this project that you are working on, let's say you're working in marketing, what is the budget for this specific project? And if you don't know the answer, please ask someone. So sometimes data with achievements isn't necessarily only about the results, but even the scope of your work. So if you're working on a $3 million project, then it's important that people know that. Here's why it's important, even if you're not looking for a promotion. One, for your annual review. I'm actually going to be speaking to one of my clients today about their annual review and how they can have a conversation about feedback that they've received. They are a star employee and leader within their organization, but we need to strategize around how they talk about that. So one is for your annual review. If you're having any kind of performance review or even check-ins with your manager or with your board, it's important to have that data. And then the second piece is you may not want a promotion now, but you may want one in a year or even in 5 years from now. And sometimes when I'm asking the leadership development clients that I have, 5 years ago when you worked on that amazing project, it sounds really cool and that you made a really big impact. how much did you sell? Or what was the volume of whatever units that were associated with this project? Or how much did you grow the followers or engagement by in this project? And the client says, I don't know. That was 5 years ago. So document your achievements and your data points now so that you can make sure that you're advocating for yourself in the right way, no matter what position you're in and what kind of company you're in.
That strikes me as it's quite a good salve maybe for imposter syndrome as well. It's something to look back on, like, what have I done? This is why I deserve to be here. So the annual review, I mean, how do you feel about that as a concept? Because I have pretty strong views on it, I'll admit.
Yeah, let me tell a quick story. I think that it's too subjective in many cases, and it puts power in the hands of people who, if they have great intentions, fantastic, wonderful, can help you grow and shift, and it's just amazing. If the person doesn't have good intentions or hasn't been trained on how to effectively evaluate, then it can be challenging. So I am someone who likes to get high marks or an A+ on whatever I do, right? Depending on what country you're from. I know everybody grades differently, but high marks, that's what I want. So I had an evaluation where my boss gave me, let's say, a 4 out of 5, which is kind of like a B, not the highest marks and not what I felt like my work was like. And I asked, what led you to give me that rating? And he said, well, no one gets an A. And I was like, what? What do you mean? It was like, nobody gets an A. I want A's. I want high marks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, definitely.
And in this company, what your rating was actually determined your bonus. So that person not desiring to give me the highest rating because he said nobody gets the highest rating actually determined my pay. So, but what I did was I used information from this book, Getting Past No, to draft a conversation with my employer in order to share that I was going to start providing her my accomplishments every week. But I positioned it in a way that made it feel like I was about to do something to benefit the organization, to say, hey, I would like to start to share with you some of the things that I'm accomplishing in my role that would really be great for you to be able to share up to your manager in order to position our department as a really standout department for our organization. What are your thoughts about that? And he said, oh, that's a great idea. I was like, thank you so much. And so from every single week, sharing my accomplishments, and with my desire being, I'm trying to get this A+, I actually got the highest rating on the next evaluation. But initially, he was like, nobody gets A's, which is not good. So I think that evaluations are tricky and not always great. I don't know the answer for, what the alternative was, because I do believe you should be holding people accountable. I do think feedback consistently is best. And I know, like, the name of this podcast is Leading with Integrity. And I feel like if you are a leader of good character and you really want to see people succeed, you should be honest with them about the positive things that they're doing within their role and areas for growth in a way that they can digest it on a regular basis. Yep.
Yeah, I agree, especially on the consistency. I think my main problem with the annual review thing is the word annual. Because I get why it's like that, because managers don't want to be constantly doing the paperwork that comes with it, do they? But for me, like, if you're only giving feedback once a year and you fall into that habit way too easily because you only have to do it once a year, so you won't, human nature being what it is, you just won't think about it until probably the week before. And there's all these other great moments probably of learning, of the ability to praise someone for some great work, or even just pick up on something that's not worked quite the right way. And that might have been months ago, it could have been a year ago if you're doing once a year. And how are you going to remember that? And also, like, even if you do remember it, or even if you are writing it down as you go, you're keeping like your little checklist for each employee or something. It's basically useless if you leave it that long. I really firmly believe that feedback has to be timely and prompt, and in both cases, whether it's good or bad. So for me, I mean, minimum, I would say you should be having monthly conversations. And if it's something like really notable, again, good or bad, do it straight away. So that's my issue with it. But anyway, good story though. And I think I might have that book. I'm looking at my bookshelf. Getting to know. There was a partner one, wasn't there? Or getting to yes or getting past no. Yeah. I haven't read those in ages. That's a blast from the past, that is. But great books.
Very practical.
The senior leaders then, what do you think is the number one thing that holds them back and stops them from thriving in that kind of role?
I think that one of the biggest things that prevents senior leaders from thriving is not having a clear enough idea of what expectations are for success within their roles. And what I mean by that is there's a lot usually going on that you're responsible for once you've reached senior leadership level. On a regular basis, there are so many different things that you could be doing. You may even have a strategic plan in place where you feel like you do know what to focus on, but either you don't have time to focus on those things or to move those things forward, or you're focusing on the strategic plan, but your manager, even if your manager is, again, C-suite or the board, even if you're in the highest senior level positions, maybe you're not clear on what your manager defines as success. So if your manager only wants you to work on A for whatever it is that, your whole plate of priorities are, but you're working on B, C, and D, and you thought that you're going to get to A in a few months, then according to your manager, you're not being effective within your role. So you want to be really, really clear on what does success look like in the eyes of your manager or your board in a way that you will always be a successful senior leader within their eyes. And for some people, that makes no sense because they're like, but the priority is actually B, C, D, and E. It's not letter A. It's not this item. However, we know, even based on what we just said a few minutes ago, that your manager or your board defines success often for what you're doing within your role. So definitely be having conversations that initiate you asking, in your opinion, what does success look like in my role over the next 3 months based on our strategic priorities or based on the conversation we had today? Or I know we have a number of priorities. Where would you say I should be focusing the most of my energy in order to really produce the most successful result in your eyes? So asking those kinds of questions as senior leaders in order to be able to create success within your role.
I think there's a lesson there as well for the people they are leading. So to me, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think, if you find yourself in that position, that is definitely something you should be doing, asking your leadership, what's expected of me? How are we measuring success here? But I also quite firmly believe that the onus is on the leadership to define those expectations. Like if you're in a position where you don't know what those are, that's not necessarily your fault. It might be your problem to solve, but I don't think it's your fault. I think that, to me, speaks of a failing in the leadership that you're working for somewhere. And so the lesson to take away from that, I think, is, are the people you're leading, are they aware of what's expected of them? Have you had that conversation with them?
Yeah.
Human nature is so easily overlooked, isn't it? And we all just assume that we're all on the same page quite a lot without verifying that. And maybe people think it's a difficult conversation and they want to avoid it as well, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. It's more difficult to not have those what could be a difficult conversation or could be an easy conversation to have, but it can be more difficult, especially when it's your direct report and you're just like, they're just not hitting the mark. I don't want to tell them, though, that they're doing this thing or they're not doing this thing. Just tell them so they can hit the mark, or so you at least give them an opportunity to hit the mark.
Exactly, yeah. And also, like, if you don't have that slightly difficult conversation, would you prefer the much more difficult one in months or years' time when they've consistently failed to meet these expectations you never told them about? Because that's going to be worse, definitely.
Yeah, it will be. And they might be like, why didn't you just tell me?
Yeah, which is a reasonable question, isn't it?
Exactly.
let's move on to, it's become a buzz phrase, hasn't it, on social media, this idea of work-life balance. I mean, firstly, is that even a thing? Is that achievable, or is it the myth of the modern age?
Yeah, so that's a great question. This is a very tricky topic and a very touchy topic. I think the actual phrase of work-life balance has become very unpopular now. And people have found different ways, like they're like work-life harmony, like things like that. But I feel like it's all in the same camp of work-life balance. So here are some things that I've discovered. I have around 20 one-on-one clients that are leadership development clients. I have a contract with a company right now doing trainings and supporting their executive leaders with coaches. I have 6 coaches that are working with me. And then I have, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but it's worth mentioning again, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old little girl. And I am an after-school mom where I'm doing the homework with them, like bath time. For any parents, you understand what I mean. Bath time, homework time. It's like a second job. And then I have a husband too. And he wants some time as well. And I got to stay healthy as well. So I got to exercise and eat right. My goodness. It's a lot. So I think though, even though I have a lot on my plate, it's definitely possible that some of those things that I have to do every day are within my control to manage my approach to them. And here's what I mean. I had peer coaching. I was in a certification program, and I was telling my coach in this program, like, I really just want to try to not work past 3. And I said, I think it'll be maybe in a year from now or 2 years that I'll be able to do that. And then I realized through talking more to the coach, all I had to do is move the things on my schedule that are past 3 to another day. Like they're actually not essential for me to be doing past 3 for work. So I just cleared my schedule the next week when I thought it was going to take me a year. So I know that sounds like, crazy example, maybe doesn't apply to people who are listening. So here's 2 things that people can do in order to achieve better work-life balance. So 1, the Eisenhower matrix, do, delete, delegate, decide. Look at your schedule on a daily or weekly basis and think about, what do you need to do for sure today? What can you delete? For example, I'm like, should I switch from this marketing email campaign tool to another tool? I'm fine with my tool. So delete. And there's some things, delay, right? For example, let's say I just launched a book. It's called Becoming the Ripple. And so creating a top 100 list of where I would like to market this book. Important, but not necessary for me to do this week. It can be moved. It can keep moving, actually. For me, it's not a big priority. So that is delay. And then the delegate part. This is fantastic. So I don't need to be, this is something I did that I didn't have to do for my book. I really wanted to make sure that it was edited effectively. So it's 112 pages. So I had an editor, and I still bought Grammarly and spent 6 hours going through every line. Don't do this unless you have time. And I went and I edited every line. Now, the better thing to do is just delegate. If you want to edit it a lot, just get a few editors. Get more than one, right? If you feel like that is a priority for you. So some people would delegate. They're like, hey, just get someone to clean your house. Other people are like, no, I want to clean my house. That's fine. But what can you delegate if you feel like you need more time? What can you delete? What can you delay? And what do you actually need to do right now? So for me, that has been a game changer and allowed me to sleep. Whew. Even though I have all these things on my schedule, or just be present with my children, in front of them, looking into their eyes, not focused on other things, to have those moments. It means that I can't do everything myself, or I just can't do everything. I say no to a number of things. So the Eisenhower matrix is one of those things. And then the second thing is, they say what you think about expands. So if you're like, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, I'm busy. Think about, I make space for the things that I want to make time for. I make space for the things I want to make time for. Or if you're like me, you're trying to make sure you're spending time with your kids. What's one thing that I can do to spend quality time with this child today? What is one thing I can do to spend quality time with this specific child today? So think about the potential of your schedule. And this applies even if you're a career professional, thinking through what is one thing I can do today to move this priority forward? Just one big thing or one small thing that would make a big difference that can move this project forward, as opposed to feeling like you need to put in 6 hours, even though you need to, maybe 6 hours on a project. Think about what can you do that results in the biggest impact. So those are some things that have been helpful for me for work-life balance. It may never be perfect though, okay? But you can at least get closer to what it is you want to create when it comes to your balance.
Yeah, I think a lot of the pushback against the phrase is the word balance, isn't it? That's why I quite like harmony instead. I like it. It feels nicer, but I mean, balance implies there's equal measures of things, doesn't it? And that you can literally balance things off against each other. And I just don't think that's how life is anymore, if it ever was. Yeah. So, I mean, apart from the obvious one of just modern lives and so many different things flying at us all the time, why is it, do you think, so many people struggle with this, particularly in terms of balancing non-work life with professional life?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why people struggle with it is the feeling like they're not in control. For example, your boss is like, hey, David, we need all hands on deck for this project. So everyone is going to be staying after work for 3 hours today. And of course, we need you to be a team player on this. But David, maybe you've promised your significant other that you are going to be meeting them for dinner at 5 today, right after work. So I think for some people that makes them stressed, for some even depressed. Like, I have no control. I wanted to eat healthy. When I got home, I was going to cook, but my boss said they need me at work. Or my child's game I was going to be at, and now I can't be there anymore, right? There's that with the evening, like just in terms of the personal life piece. One, there's so many things, there's so many distractions, right? Online stuff, social media things, emails, like all these different things. It doesn't feel realistic to feel like you can actually have time for yourself. And then there's people who have other responsibilities. They're caretakers, whether of an older family member maybe, or a child, or even a grandchild, a nephew, a niece. And in my experience, I just know small children, they don't, how do I say it? They don't prioritize what's on my plate. They're like, Mommy, I need a Band-Aid right now, and I need you to put it on for me. So it seems like, oh my gosh, I was just trying to sit in my room for a few minutes and get some quiet time. I have no idea what I can do. However, it is my belief that in every circumstance, we often have at least a little bit more control than we think. For example, starting with the home example, like, hey, little child, Mommy will be out in 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes and I'll come out. Or, hey, Mommy's going to put the Band-Aid and the ointment in the hallway. So if you ever need any, just get it. That can be crazy, right? They might put like 3 cups of ointment. I'm being crazy, but yeah. I put the ointment on my hands, whatever, but it's okay.
I still do that now sometimes.
And then at work, this is where I talk about the power of influence. So what is the win-win with your manager? Hey, manager, I completely understand. This is from the Getting Past No, Getting to Yes, Crucial Conversations, like all these books on negotiation, right? So I definitely want to make sure that I contribute to the success of this project. I understand all hands must be on deck. I completely agree this is a priority for our team. I'm wondering, or if depending on how your approach to this conversation, you could either say, I'm wondering if I could just come in tomorrow 3 hours early. Or I could come in tomorrow 2 hours early and knock this out. Or I actually have 2 people on my team that I can have come tonight after work who'd be glad to stay afterwards. I have a prior obligation with, my family, or I have a prior obligation at that time after work that I have to attend to. Or whatever it is that you can say, but thinking through what is the alternative that still gets the intention met of the manager or of whoever it is, of the colleague, of the direct report, that allows you to still have the perception of being, I am a team player, because I'm not saying can't do it, which you could say, but I like win-win. So is there someone that can come in for you? Could you come in the next morning? Could you log back on at 8 p.m. and get the thing done on your own at home? So thinking through what is the win-win. But I feel like if you feel like you have no influence over the situations at work or at home, and that's why I had to use specific examples, it can feel horrible. It can feel really bad. It can feel like there's absolutely no way out of the situation of not having balance. But in my experience, sometimes we can have a little bit more influence, at least a little, than what we believe.
Yeah, and it's an interesting scenario as well, which was ringing bells for me. I think most people have been in that very same situation, at least the professional side of it, whatever the out of work demand on the time might have been, probably different for everyone. And again, like, not to lay it all at the feet of the boss or the leader or the manager, but I also feel like if you are constantly doing that to people, and especially like that short notice thing where you tell them as they're packing up for the day or something, I need you to stay for 3 hours. It's like the guy in the Office Space, that film. Have you seen that?
No.
Where is that? Yeah, I'm going to need you to stay. And it becomes that joke, running joke. Highly recommend that film. It's hilarious. But anyway, side note there. I do feel like if you're the sort of manager, sort of boss who's doing that consistently over time, I mean, first of all, you're going to massively burn your people out really quickly. They're not going to stay for the long term, I think. But also, like, it's like that. It's the social capital, isn't it? You're using that up too frequently, probably for things that aren't as urgent as you think they are. It's just again, like the manager in that situation, you're panicking because there's probably a deadline. It might not be as serious as you think, but I can't do this on my own. I need people to help me with that. So if you're taking more of a long-term view and you're working with people a bit better, and you're managing time collectively, and it's more of a conversation. I mean, you're giving people more of an agency and influence in it, so they feel better about their work-life balance and their ability to control their own fates to an extent, which is really important, I think, especially these days. Way more than it was last time I was doing a job in an office anyway.
Yes.
But also you get more trust and respect from them, because over time they'll come to know that you're not going to ask that kind of question unless it's absolutely necessary, because you respect them and their time as well. And I think that's a really powerful and important thing for leaders to be able to do.
I agree, David. That was powerful. Thank you.
I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, you go through it enough times yourself and you just get to that point where you're like, there has to be a better way of doing this. We can't keep carrying on like this. It's going to fall apart around us. So yeah, you do learn from the mistakes, definitely.
Yeah. And you said something about the manager thinking that something was urgent that may not actually be as urgent. I think that's actually a huge problem in many organizations. And I would say the source of conflict that I've seen on a number of teams is that someone higher up, again, it could be a board, it could be the C-suite, it could be someone's direct manager or senior manager, feels like everything is urgent. And so people are getting burnt out and they're confused about what actually is urgent. So I love that you said that as well.
Yes, we used to have a saying in that particular job that if everything's urgent, then nothing is. Because that was the way it was. Like, we had, try not to be too rude about him, but we had a boss, like, his default position was, if I'm the one asking, you must treat it as urgent. And you're just like, okay, but I can't treat everything as urgent. Otherwise, like, there's 10 things at once. If they're all urgent, I mean, effectively none of them are. What do you want me to do first, sort of thing?
Yes.
And it's just, that ability to prioritize effectively. And the Eisenhower matrix is great for that. I love it. But again, we even used it and everything ended up in the urgent and important box. And you're just, this isn't working. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable. That's the word. That is the word. Yeah. Prioritization is definitely a skill of its own as well.
Yes, I agree.
Well, let's move on to some more leadership specific questions. The first of those is going to be, what is, would you say, the biggest leadership lesson you've learned from your whole career so far?
And I was thinking about what would be the best lesson to share. And I think this one is very helpful, hopefully for a lot of people. But I was struggling with figuring out if I should bring my authentic self to work. And what I mean by that is I'm naturally someone who loves doing work in excellence. And I also have a lot of questions naturally around things. If I see a problem, I want to solve it. I'm also super silly in real life with my family. I am singing, I'm dancing around the house, I'm all that. And again, still do work in excellence, but I'm just super silly. And loud, my husband would say. So it's like, do I bring my authentic self to work? And I saw an Instagram post, and this may be a controversial answer to this, but the person on Instagram said, you may not want to bring your full authentic self to work if your work environment is not safe enough that it would embrace that authentic version. But what you do want to bring to work is your best professional self, is what she said. And I was like, that's interesting. And that resonated with me. And to me, what that looks like is adaptability. For example, maybe this question people can relate to. On the disc, I'm an I with the unexpected strength of a C, which means I'm personable. I love people. I love to get to know people. I want everyone to be okay. But the C aspect of the disc is we like questions, precision, excellence. So I can't ask a whole bunch of questions in meetings if that's not the appropriate time or if we don't have enough time. I need to instead identify what are the most important questions that I need to ask, and or what is the right platform to be able to get my questions answered if they are essential. And how can I make sure that I'm self-directed in the questions that I may not be able to ask or it may not be appropriate to ask based on the culture of the organization. So that's my best professional self associated with the culture. Me being loud and silly at times may not be aligned with a specific kind of culture. So instead, I show up, I'm thoughtful, I'm listening, right? I'm a certain kind of way. I'm professional in whatever that culture is. Then when I get outside with my colleagues, I'm like, hey, where y'all eat for lunch? For example. So it's adaptability in the right circumstances and making sure that I bring my best professional self to work. That has been helpful in every sense. If there's difficult conversations, how do I adapt and how do I be my best professional self in that specific instance? Or if there's someone who maybe needs a little bit more encouragement and they need for me to really lay things out very specifically, how do I adapt and be my best professional self in that instance? But that was tricky because when I first started working, my first, I would say, really big job where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm in this role. I was like, how should I show up? What should I do? I had a colleague who is a little mean sometimes. I'm like, am I supposed to be like that? I wasn't. It's not my nature. But I'm like, what do I do? So I had to learn, how do I be my best professional self and adapt in every instance? So that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned for me professionally.
It's a great lesson. It's an unusual answer to this question as well, so I love it for that too. Yeah, I'm torn though. Like, in an ideal world, everyone would be able to find the workplace culture where they can just be authentically themselves and they don't have to be like moderating or editing their behavior. within reason, as long as they're not doing anything that's like illegal or toxic, obviously. But yeah, and authenticity, we talk about quite a lot. And lately, I think there's a misunderstanding around authenticity as well. And I think part of this is because of how it gets hijacked by marketing and social media. But I don't think it means everything of yourself all the time, nor should it. I mean, for some people, there's the aspect like you've talked about, where it's the professional authenticity, and there's bits of yourself that you don't feel are the right fit for that culture. But for some people as well, they're quite private by nature, and they maybe don't want to be sharing everything all the time, nor should they. But I think that the thing we're missing about it is authenticity it doesn't mean share everything about yourself. It means what you do share and the way you are is actually the way you are. It's that you're not presenting a false picture in order to fit in with a culture that doesn't align with you or your values, for example. So I think, I don't know, there's a grey area, there's a middle ground somewhere where, to an extent, maybe we should be, I don't know, editing, moderating, curating, let's say, the aspects of ourselves that we bring to work. But then there's also a line somewhere where, if you're having to do that too much, to the extent that you're not really feeling like you're being yourself at work, then you're in the wrong workplace and you need to go somewhere else, find somewhere that does fit better, which isn't very scientific. I don't know what the actual answer is to solve that if you face that issue, aside from just, I don't know, start applying for jobs and see what you find. But
yeah, I think it can be very challenging, I think, especially if people's cultural norms, or if they're even, it could be gender, but whoever they are naturally is just not as accepted within the workplace. For example, my husband is from Brooklyn, New York. And in New York, generally, I'm completely stereotyping. In Brooklyn, people can be loud, talk really fast, right? Maybe a lot of hand gestures. That may not be as accepted and that's people of all backgrounds. That city just has that, that's stereotypical of the city. When I came from Miami, similarly, as soon as I got to college, everybody knew I was from Miami because the way I was talking. So I think it can be harder for some people. But also, to your point, I've also seen workplaces that embrace the most authentic version of people, no matter who they are, where they're from, how they communicate, as long as they operate in excellence, which I think is so fantastic. And I think actually makes the world a better place when people can do that, because they are operating in excellence. And that's what, in my opinion, is extremely important to that company.
I think it's one of the great fallacies of work, isn't it? That you can separate what it is about a person that makes them good at a job from the way they are and the way they act, behave, whatever you don't think fits your workplace, whether it's being loud or saying what they think without being asked and things like this. The kind of things that a lot of old-fashioned managers tend to sort of raise their eyebrows at and get quite upset about. Yeah. I mean, as a leader, I don't want anyone to feel, if I'm leading a team, that they don't fit there. And so there is, again, I don't know the answer. Sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes it's just luck if it works, isn't it? But being able to build that culture where completely opposite types of character, types of behavior can still work together and get on. And there isn't that argument between like the quiet, focused people who want to do some work and the loud people who need to express in order to think things through. Because that's a massive tension, and it's always there, isn't it? And you always get that sort of the quiet ones sort of sighing to themselves and getting passive aggressive. I was one of those. And then they get the loud ones being like, well, why are they so quiet? Why aren't they joining in? But there is a way for those two things to exist in harmony. There's that word again. I think it is, leadership does play a massive role in it, though. I think that's where I've come to settle on my answer, I suppose. But
yes. I love what you said too about the private people may not want to actually share. So I was one of those people who was surprised when I got to work that people said, how was your weekend? And I'm like, well, that's very personal.
None of your business. That's how it was.
Then I'm like, oh, this is how we build rapport. Well, what do I want to share about my weekend? I'm not really sure. But I think there is a a challenge when people think, oh, if we're all authentic, it means that we're all sharing all of our personal selves. When someone's authenticity might actually be that that's not as comfortable for them. So I love how you pointed that out.
Yeah. But again, there is a middle ground there. Like if you are that private person, you don't want to answer that, just say, look, I'd rather not talk about it if that's okay. And most people will just, you don't have to be brutal. You don't have to answer as I just did as a joke and say, it's none of your business, leave me alone. I mean, you can, that's an option. Probably not a great way to build relationships with your colleagues though. And there's a more polite kind of way of answering that without necessarily having to give everything away if you don't want to. That's something I've learned as well. I was very bad at that in my early career. Okay, so I mean, slightly opposite question now. What do you think is the biggest mistake that we make as leaders and as humans?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make as leaders and humans is assuming we know someone's intentions. An example is in what you just said. So if you say, I'd rather not talk about it, if that's okay, then someone might say, he hates me. Like, he absolutely hates me. He never wants to talk to me. And I will never ask him how he's doing or what he did on his weekend again. It's true, that happens. But if you take what he says, what David has just said, at its face value, all he said was, I'd rather not talk about it, if that's okay. Pleasant, very pleasant. That's all he said. But sometimes we're looking into deeper stories, and it could be something as simple as, my direct report still hasn't answered my email. They're trying to be insubordinate to me. I'll show them. Maybe they just didn't get to answer your email. Or if someone doesn't speak at a meeting and you make assumptions, versus if someone's always speaking up at a meeting and you make assumptions about them. So I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we make, is assuming that we know someone's intentions based on what hasn't been said or even done at some times.
Yeah, absolutely. And also an extension of that, I suppose, or a subset, I don't know, assuming others' intentions are the same as ours or what we think ours would be in their shoes. Because not everyone thinks the same, not everyone views the world the same way. And that's got me into a few arguments over the years.
Yeah.
That could have been avoided had I just asked a simple question.
That makes sense.
Okay, I have to ask you this question because I always love hearing the answers to this one. What would you say in your whole career so far was your best experience of being led?
Yes. My manager's name was Valley Vero. She was the senior VP for an organization that I was working with, and my direct manager at that time. She was fantastic as a leader because she led with excellence, like very, this is my perspective of excellence, in my opinion. She modeled how she did her work well in a way that made me look up to her as not only a leader, but an implementer in the things that she did. Her communication to me was direct, but still very considerate and thoughtful. So I had a lot of work that she gave me to do, but our agendas, like our meetings, were very efficient. And there were a lot of different things that she put into place and other things that I put into place in order to make our communication between our check-ins very efficient as well. She was affirming, which actually is really important to me. And I know some leaders are like, I don't need to affirm anyone. But she was affirming, which is really nice. But at the same time had very high expectations, which I could meet realistically, and that she provided the resources for me to be able to meet. So providing something for me to do, big project, but then making sure that I had every resource that I needed in order to be able to implement or create a project well. So I really loved working for that manager. I keep in touch with her to this day. I would probably send her flowers every year, even though I worked with her a long time ago, like over a decade ago. But that would be awkward probably. But I do check in with her every year and remind her of how wonderful of a manager that she was.
Yeah, I love that. So we're recording this during International Leadership Week. It probably won't be airing for many months yet, but so the theme for that week this year is leadership legacy. And I can't think of a better example of legacy than someone who over a decade later still views your leadership as their best experience being led. So I think that says it all, doesn't it?
I think so too. I'll have to send her this podcast episode.
Feel free. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so conscious of time, we've got time for 2 more questions. One of them could be quite short, probably. But
Sure.
all right, so this one, probably the most difficult question I ask, I think. And that is, if you could start your career over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Yes. I loved reaching out to people and asking them for advice on different things, but it was more about the art of my work, as opposed to the intricacies of what it means to lead and to be successful in work. So, for example, I was at a conference, and I think I was an undergrad, and there was this man who had been in the world of PR for many years. He probably was in his 70s. I reached right out to him, asked him for some advice, thanked him for what he shared at the conference. That's great. That's awesome. But what I didn't do was try to get mentors and sponsors to say, how should I navigate my career? What kinds of positions should I take on first, second, third? How much should I ask for? My first job, don't judge me if you're listening, but I asked, they said, how much do you want? And I never heard of anybody's salaries, and I had not researched because I didn't have professional mentors guiding me through the science, basically, of managing my career. I was like, $30,000. And she said, that's it? She said, that is too little. And she said, at least ask for it. And then she told me like a much higher amount. But I was like, $30,000? Like, that's all for me? That's a lot of money. So I had no idea. I did not start in a strategic place in my career, in my opinion. I'm happy for the opportunities that I had, but I wasn't as strategic as I could have been. And here's the thing. If you are someone who's leading with integrity, right? The name of this podcast, then you being positioned in certain leadership roles can really transform the whole culture of organizations. And so I did great work. I did work in excellence. I kept being promoted into different positions. But had I started in a different place, getting mentors and sponsors meaning people who can directly influence me getting opportunities sooner, as a professional would have been even better. So an interesting thing that I'll share is even where I'm at now as an entrepreneur, having my business for 11 years now, I'm always getting mentors and sponsors now. Even at this time in my career, this season in my career. And one colleague told me, and I don't completely embrace this. Maybe it's imposter syndrome, David, but she said, you're one of the most successful coaches that I know. That's so sweet. She said that, but I'm still gathering lots of mentors and sponsors to help me understand how to strategically navigate my own journey.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. And a lovely example of leading with integrity there as well, that hiring manager saying, you should ask for this instead. Most of them would have just been like, okay, that's all brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly what we were thinking too. Yeah, you're hired. Yeah. Okay, Daphne, last question. This one's my favorite one though. It's called Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it could be literally anyone you can think of, they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious even, but it's somebody who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. So who would that be for you and why?
Yeah, so I would pick Maya Angelou. She's an author. She's a poet. She did a lot of work internationally in a lot of different ways. What I love about her is she embodies a number of the things we were talking about today. The way that it seemed as if she managed her time, even as someone who's famous, was very noble, the things that she was able to do. And when she did them, she seemed completely present and in the moment. for the people who she was engaging with, whether they were kids or the president of the United States or whoever, just completely present and in the moment. The messages she shared were messages that to me showed that she didn't make assumptions about people, but instead was trying to help everyone to understand how to be more open to really taking in who a person really is, acknowledging that, and honoring that as a leader. So spreading that kind of message to others, no matter what positions or roles that they have personally or professionally, to me is very noble work and very honorable work. So I would say Maya Angelou.
And a great choice. One of my favorite leadership quotes, in fact, that I'm always trotting out on this podcast, so everyone's heard it before, was one of hers about, down the line, people won't remember what you said, what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And that's, such a guiding principle for leadership, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, lovely. Well, Daphne, it's been wonderful meeting you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm only sad it's too short. One final thing I will ask you, if anyone in the audience, I'm sure all of them would like to learn more about you, where can they go? What's the website, the links, anything you want to share, really?
Sure, will do. And David, I must say, before I share that this was one of my favorite podcasts that I've been on, based on you and all that you brought to the conversation. I feel like I learned as much as I shared. So thank you so much for just all that you shared and the presence with which you share it, the authentic presence with which you share it. So for me, if people want to find me, they can find me at my website, www.valcinstrategicsolutions.com. They can also just look up my name, daphnevalcin.com, and that'll come right up. On LinkedIn, you can find me by my name as well. I'm also on Instagram under my name if you also want pictures of my family sometimes as well. So those are a few places that people can find me.
Lovely. Well, I'll put all of those links down in the show notes so everyone can find them easily. And that's all we've got time for, really. So thank you so much again.
My pleasure.
Thanks again, Daphne, for a wonderful conversation there. Listener and viewer, you already know what I'm going to say, but I will say it anyway. Hit those links in the show notes. Visit Daphne's website and her LinkedIn. Learn more about what she gets up to when she's not appearing on podcasts and being such an excellent guest. And if you are looking for more clarity in your own leadership style, you're in a moment of change or transition in your journey as a leader, and if you also, as an added bonus, have a healthy love of sci-fi, science fiction, then come and join us at Integrity Leaders. It's the online community for new leaders, first-time managers, people looking for that clarity, support, safe space, if you will. So join us today and step aboard the Starship Integrity. Details can be found at www.leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. Hit that green button about halfway down the homepage and you'll very quickly find yourself at the sign up page for the community. That is all I have time for today, except to say thank you so much for being with us again. Hope to speak with you again next week when I'll be joined by my next guest, Vaishali Shah, to talk about the business and leadership lessons learned from 25 years as a company owner and founder. So don't miss that one. And until then, be a leader, not a boss.